Welcome, everybody, to another episode of DNS Unfiltered. Today, I have a special guest, Jonathan Singer from GuidePoint. He's going to tell us all about the channel. What is that? Maybe we'll start there. But all about sales. He's what is your title? A technical account?
Technical account manager,
Technical account
glorified,
manager.
glorified account executive. But don't take it for its face value. I do have a technical background.
Yes, we were just nerding out about Joomla. So Jonathan is quite capable of giving us the rundown on some tech stuff. But Jonathan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about this.
Good. So Jonathan and I have met once or twice at GuidePoint's CKOs. I think I've been to two. You've probably been
Yes.
to a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Can you start by telling us, and this is for myself mostly, partially the audience, but like, give me your definition of the channel. What is that?
So the channel, in my opinion, can mean a lot of different things. For my case personally, channel means going to market with more than just yourself or just your own organization. It's going to market with strategic play, having other people in the room that can either, help you get a seat at the table or speak positively about your product or solution. It's kind of like taking your sales team and throwing a force multiplier at it. And that's how I see the channel, and living in it, I get to kind of experience that every day.
So I think this terminology like really confuses people. I've only been kind of knowledgeable about the channel. I always like do finger quotes in my head, but the channel for maybe 2 years or so. And the familiarity I had before that was through MSPs, so which are part of the channel, but you're really on the kind of reseller side.
Absolutely. And I do define an MSP as a channel also. Remember, channel can be, I guess, a couple different things, or you can have multiple channels to a goal, right? And in the reseller world, we focus on taking, fantastic brands from across the industry and helping get them introduced to people that we already have wonderful working relationships with, help solve those challenges that our customers are dealing with in the enterprise by saying, well, did you know that some of these brands do exactly what you're describing to me? Maybe it's worth checking it out. Maybe it's worth getting an introduction. Kind of like how an MSP is going to say, well, it sounds like you have a problem with your organization. You've hired us to help you fix it. But furthermore, we're going to bring along our toolbox, right? And that toolbox is full of different tools, software, technologies, and things that are going to help solve that ultimate challenge. So the MSP is definitely a channel to the customer, but so is that reseller world.
That is a great description of the channel. I'm definitely a little bit more knowledgeable now, and for the last few years, I've seen the benefits of selling in that manner. So it's really good to see or hear a good, solid description from someone that lives it every day. So thank you for that. That
Yeah,
was mostly for me.
absolutely.
I hope the audience enjoyed it too.
Just to throw a little credibility out there. So this is coming up on my 12th year at GuidePoint. So I've definitely seen a lot, learned a lot. But this is also my first foray in this kind of role too. Um, I came from data centers before where there wasn't necessarily like a channel world. We were just buying racks, directly from manufacturers. So it's kind of a different experience, but it's cool to see the benefits of it when you are involved in that kind of stream from product to solution.
How do you think the selling of cybersecurity software has really like evolved in the channel?
I think so I have this theory, this story. It goes something like this. In every little cybersecurity startup's life, there becomes the point where you've exhausted your own resources. I feel like you grow as an organization and you hire on some very good salespeople and you hit the market and you get your customers and your use cases and you start to build a portfolio, and then you start to slow down or you feel like your sales becomes stagnant. Your team has done what they could, and you have to figure out how to grow, expand, and onboard more customers, but through a potentially creative manner, like the channel, as in seeking out other partners to say, you know, you seem to know some of these accounts way better than we do. Can you help us? Can you help us get to our new sales goals and expand our brand? Can you potentially represent us in a positive light such that there is now more people that are made aware about what we do beyond our own initiatives, right? Like, and I say our own initiatives from the position of that product company.
So if you're a product company, if you're creating something, what is like a good roadmap slash playbook to get in touch with someone like GuidePoint to prepare yourself to sell through someone like GuidePoint?
Well, the trick first is have a product, right? Like,
Have a
it
good
almost
product,
feels,
preferably.
yeah. Look, RSA is right around the corner, right? That is the big showcase of all the tech startups. Everything fresh coming out of Israel and coming out of Silicon Valley. All these fantastic tools, and again, just because you're a startup doesn't mean that your technology is weak or not fully matured yet. Yeah, there's some great stuff, but the trick is are you actually doing business today? Do you have customers that are providing like a feedback loop so that you have constant improvements? Are you identifying what your potential competitors are doing in the market, right? So where is your business from a maturity perspective? As is there something ultimately to deliver and solve a challenge or solve a problem, and can it be done effectively? And so that's that first phase I just talked about, which is as you grow and mature as an organization through your own internal efforts. You're out there, you're marketing, you're selling, you're building your customer base, you're getting the use cases on your homepage. And then you start to realize maybe direct is starting to become exhausted, and we have to start seeking channel partners and seeking resellers and somebody to help get to that, stage two. And then it becomes, understanding, well, who am I targeting? What is my market? Am I doing the entire United States? Am I trying to stay, close to the West Coast or close to the East Coast? You might start shopping around for different resellers, different integrators, different MSPs even, and understanding, is your tool part of a bigger solution like an MSP? Can it be integrated at large? Can it be multi-tenancy? Or is your goal to just go wild? I want to sell to everyone, everywhere. Then you start to kind of look around and see, okay, well, then who's got that kind of market presence that can, again, force multiplier, put me on blast, get me in front of the most people as much as possible. But again, I say this like it sounds simple. There's still so much more to
Right.
it. Oh,
There's
I
a
will continue. I,
uh,
I will go if we want to run with
n-
it.
I was just thinking of the put you on blast phrase that you said is like the perfect tagline for GuidePoint and other people in the reseller space. But I am curious. So that's kind of I'm a vendor that want to sell through the channel. And I'm curious, do you see vendors that sell only through the channel, or is it usually a
Yeah,
mix?
and that's the thing too, is it's almost like I feel like a sliding scale. So you start out as a startup, as a small company, doing pretty much everything direct, maybe some referrals here and there through personal relationships, but over time that scale flips. Now, from our perspective, we love to hear when somebody is what we say 100% channel or all in on the channel. I will never fault a product company for holding on to like some legacy, something direct that's massive, where the customer says nobody's gonna get in the way. No reseller, I want to work with you only. Like, again, look, there's always a use case, but when somebody says we only sell through channel. In fact, if we get an inbound lead direct to us, somebody visits our website uh, and they ask for a quote or pricing or follow-ups, uh, and we have to bring it to a channel partner. That's the kind of relationship we love, because that to us means that you are interested in making us part of your success and making us part of that story. Or you furthermore, you see value in being part of that relationship where as a product company you may solve one or two or a handful of solutions, but at the customer, enterprise security is very wide. And so, being part of that relationship, being part of that experience means that us as a reseller, we can help tackle some of those other areas where the product company is not filling in, and we're building better security for everybody.
You mentioned a very keyword, a good keyword in there, relationships. And that's what I've seen over the last few years since I've been, working in the channel a bit more directly, is that building relationships with people like yourself, companies like GuidePoint and others is really how it all works. It's like people want to buy from people, and that's really what it's all based on.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions about a channel partner is kind of the role that we play. At the end of the day, I represent the end customer in everything. Their best interest as a kind of not just a value added reseller, but as more specifically a trusted advisor. And when we're working with our product companies, we have to remind them, this is the communicated goal. These are the agendas. Maybe there's a budget in mind or something like that. Whereas, my perspective is how to keep a company secure in all aspects. We have to remember that as a product company, though, there's only one agenda, which is sell my product, right? And so it requires a lot for us to stay vendor agnostic. It requires a lot for us to stay neutral. And that's where relationship starts to flourish. And so our relationships with our customers grows as we show them, how we're willing to go to bat, how we're willing to be part of those negotiations, and show them that, what their goals are our goals. I mean, funny enough, oftentimes my customers are companies of products that I use. It might be my bank, and I have to remind them, I pull my debit card, and it's my best interest to make sure this goes well. It could be my cable
You're like, I've
company.
got a little feedback too. Where do I submit that?
Yeah, let me just I need to make sure this goes well because I don't want my information, right? And so hopefully that kind of puts perspective on not just building that relationship, but nurturing it and maintaining it is so critical. And now that a product company is going to come in to the channel and say, we see that you do have a very deep relationship. They trust your perspectives, they trust your advisement, and we have to be respectful of that.
So let's talk about that end customer for a minute. I've typically seen more enterprise style customers come through the channel. Um, Let me let my cat out real quick. She's going crazy.
Well, while we take this great commercial break, this is brought to you by coffee. Uh, don't sleep on it.
Don't sleep on coffee. It's going places. So let's talk for a second about that end customer and those relationships. And I've typically seen larger, like enterprise style customers buy through the channel. Is that pretty common, or who buys through the channel? I guess is the question.
So, besides all of these relationship-based discussions, or agnostic or representative discussions, there are some strategic discussions too. A lot of it comes from a legal perspective. Some of it's paperwork. You've probably heard the term that you've got paper at a place, right? But what that
Yep.
really means, and this is a fun term, it's one throat to choke. And what I mean by that is when things are good, it's a handshake. And when things are bad, you're kind of, you know, backing into a Homer bush here. And so the idea is, as a customer, as a business, you may have something like procurement, especially at that large enterprise level. And you're signing agreements, you're signing MSAs, so master service agreements, you're signing EULAs. That's more direct with the vendor. There's a number of different things that are taking place, and if it's a single point of contact for all of those inbound purchases or the variety of different tools and solutions across the enterprise, it just simplifies things greatly. Rather than every single new relationship or new person coming in, you got to start the paperwork process all over again. I do hear this over and over is, well, you need to go through our channel partner, go work with GuidePoint. This is the conversation between a customer and a vendor because we already in agreement with them. We've done the red line rodeo, the legal mumbo jumbo. If we were to try to review some contracts with a new supplier, it's going to take months. So there's an opportunity to kind of speed up that sales cycle because all of the due diligence is for the most part in place already.
Yeah, so you really did the hard work of the paperwork.
Yeah.
So so now in our equation, we've got our buyers or your
Hmm.
customers, and then you've got the product, the vendor,
Hmm.
something like DNS filter, and then you've
Yeah.
got GuidePoint kind of playing matchmaker, it sounds like.
It is. I don't want it to be considered like some kind of middle person in this thing. You're right. It is essentially a matchmaker in some cases. From a customer perspective, one of the most common questions is, I have this XYZ. Who's their competitor? What are you seeing in this market space? How do I maybe mature my product better compared to what others are doing? Right? There's a lot of strategic conversations, and we get to have that kind of visibility across almost 700 different manufacturers. Uh, Not that I have every single one memorized, I'll tell you that. But ideally, we see enough going on, and to kind of top off that little bit, we have experts in house. I do want to reiterate, VAR is kind of the second thing we do here at GuidePoint in the channel. The first is still services, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because it plays into that channel aspect of us also supporting a lot of the products that we resell. We will not just help with stuff like installation configuration and upgrades, but we build out massive professional services teams for some of our biggest solutions that we resell, simply because we want to offer a more competitive alternative to maybe vendor delivered professional services. Here's the other thing too. I'm just going to cut to the chase. Does a product company want to be a services company also? No, they want to be a product company. We kind of help offload some of that professional services kind of opportunity, and
Yeah.
we'll just handle it in the channel. We'll do your training, we'll go through, and we'll make sure that we have um, capable engineering staff to deliver upon it. But that's just kind of one of the extra little kind of sugar or cherry on top components to say the channel isn't just moving from one side to the other. We're injecting ourselves to make it a little bit more effective for everybody and cheaper. All kinds of other
Hmm.
things too.
Everything's a little cheaper at scale. So that is really interesting. So matchmaker, the dirty word, I guess, is like a secondary function of what
Mhm.
you do at GuidePoint. You're really acting as that trusted advisor that MSPs like long to be.
Absolutely. You also said one of the other magic words, which was scale, right? And at least from a guide point perspective, we're over 1,000 strong across the United States. What that means for us is that it's that kind of Costco theory. The more you buy, the cheaper it gets in bulk, and the sheer volumes of solutions and technologies that are being delivered by GuidePoint gives us the opportunity to come in at that lowest price possible, simply because we are such a high bulk volume player in the channel. That there just to kind of throw it out there, there are different levels, right? The more you sell as a channel partner, the better pricing opportunities become available to you. And so if you're doing tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue in some of this stuff, it really helps, come to the table with that kind of best and final, that kind of look, we're 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 talking numbers here that you're not going to see anywhere else in the market simply because we do so much of this stuff that we get to pass it along.
Oh, hey, a quick shout out to DNS Filter. It's like a bouncer for your network. It keeps out phishing, malware, all that nasty stuff. It's super easy to set up and it just works. Check it out at dnsfilter.com. And now back to our conversation with Jonathan Singer. So you've got these relationships that are, human relationships. So there's, a lot of, I'm sure there's like feelings and, humans were kind of flawed in many ways. So there could be like missteps on either side, either from the product vendor or the customer. What are some of those common missteps that you see that could like potentially stop a deal from happening of some sort?
I yes, you're right. Nothing is perfect. There's all kinds of different stuff. I think one of the biggest things that can really get a channel partner like us in trouble is trying to forget about that relationship or push some kind of agenda. Again, I brought up that we have to be vendor agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
We have to represent the customer's best interest in any discussion, any negotiation, and any opportunity. And there, is always somebody or some kind of scenario where, you're pressured into, well, you should sell this, wherever that messaging is coming from, whether it's coming from the vendor or something like that, we have to be very respectful. We have to remind, like, yes, we understand you probably do have a very good solution. You probably do have a very good price for your solution. But you will never hear me say you need this. You'll never hear me say you have to have this. Like, those are not things that we can do, and those are the kind of stuff that will pretty much kill that relationship that we have. And it does happen from time to time, and it's really kind of it's not fun when it does. But there's that. The other thing too is uh, one of the biggest challenges we deal with in the channel is that kind of that teeter totter I mentioned earlier, where you have a volume of direct sales and a volume of channel sales. If those direct sales
Mm-hmm.
still exist, right? If the opportunity for a vendor to sell directly to a customer still exists, that means you have the opportunity to sidestep the channel. That means you have the opportunity to kind of ignore or take us out of the picture. Uh, it does happen from time to time. And maybe you don't need some of those benefits of having a lot of the legal paperwork already knocked out for procurement. Maybe you don't need some of those benefits of established relationships and credibility. Maybe you kind of just see it as an opportunity to just make a quick sale, and that uh, you know does happen, and it's kind of it's hurtful. It's a little bit
That's the
greedy.
human part.
It is. It's very human. So I have a coworker over here, Trace. He's also a very long time friend too, and he likes to call certain types of people in the industry coin operated. And if you can imagine, it's exactly what it means. What it sounds like is, you know, if you're in it for a quick buck, this is not the industry for you. If you're in it to establish long-term relationships, build credibility across the industry, or be somebody who is sought after from a business and working relationship perspective, you'll do well. If if you if you think cyber is sexy and hot and you want to sell, more power to you. But I don't think you're going to last very long. It is a very small, tight knit community.
That is such a great way to put it. And I think it really highlights the fact of these relationships that you guys have been building with vendors, with customers, and you're in this delicate position
Mm-hmm.
that you can't burn either side of that teeter totter, the bridge. because it leaves GuidePoint or Jonathan with a bad name, like, oh, don't deal with that person or that company. So it's a really delicate balance. And kudos to you guys for managing it so well.
It's, it's a long adventure. But, you know, so one of the fun things is I'm actually surrounded, in my personal life too by successful, sales teams and salespeople. In fact, even my wife, is in software sales, and I only joined this side of the house in the last couple of years. As I mentioned, I come from a very technical place, right? Data centers and PHP and all that other fun stuff we were chatting about earlier, before the show and the notes. And I look to them, and it's all about honest sales and being true and to yourself, and not uh, you know not not to shame anybody out there, but what's your worst nightmare? Used car salesman mentality, right? Then again, I'm over here like, well, I think we all buy cars, so we got to go confront that fear at one point too, anyways.
So since you opened the can of worms on salespeople, what do you think makes a good salesperson? You kind of mentioned trust and authenticity, so I assume those are part of the equation. What else makes a good salesperson? Because whether we like it or not, everyone is in sales. You're selling yourself, you're selling a service, a product, something you have to sell. So how do you be good at that while maintaining credibility?
I mean, like you said, the first thing I learned was just being honest and being yourself, right? If you can communicate clearly and not feel that you're stressed or not feel that you're, over anxious or, whatever, that was the first thing. Something I'm definitely still learning is how to communicate and how to be effective in making an ask. That's always been the toughest thing for me historically is how do you ask for a connection to somebody within an organization? How do you ask for maybe something that may feel uncomfortable initially? And the way I've started to tackle that is I say, well, if somebody asked me that question, how would I respond? How would I, take that? Would I be angry? Would I be upset? Or would I simply say, well, that's part of their job. Sure, I'll help them out. I understand their role in this just as much as I hope they understand my role in this relationship. And and so that's one of the big things that I'd say. I'm still learning how to ask. I'm still learning how to communicate better. But that's the thing. Keep in mind in a channel role, right? Beyond just representing the customer in any kind of conversation, we have a vast, expansive landscape of enterprise security tools. And so it's not just being well aware of what DNS filter does, for instance, but it's also what's going on in EDR, what's going on in NDR, what's going on in SIM and MDR, what's going on in email, what's going on in cloud. Um, and so it's not just being a relationship person. It's not just being a salesperson, but it's also being aware of the market, of the landscape, doing your homework, staying up on the news, right? Like we were talking about, understanding, uh, you know, those challenges. And by no means, like I said, I'm technical, right? Like I kind of lucked into this, but having some form of foundational understanding of where different vendors play and what they can solve and understanding the threat landscape and what enterprise security means to different businesses, I think is absolutely foundational. Be able to walk into a room and actually talk about something.
I, I I'm going to say this, and I'll clip it myself. I think nerds are better at sales than salespeople are.
I keep getting told that, so I spent the first 10 years of my career here at GuidePoint working with different engineering teams, pen testing teams, all kinds of stuff. But more recently, under the direction of a fellow named Rick Hill. And Rick has kind of been that kind of sales guiding light for me. I've learned so much from him. But one of those things is that having somebody to like mentor you and show you little things along the way has been absolutely priceless. So it's just like you said.
Yeah. So I think it's so like I'm the same way. Like I'm come from actually at DNS Filter. I was like the DevOps engineer. That was my where I started. Now I'm in marketing, which is not sales, but it's kind of close. And you come from data centers, and now you're in sales. And I think it's just the way that we're like logically thinking about something. And we already know the technology side. We just have to learn to do the things we find hard, which is like the ask, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
communication, really important. Being less terse than you would be with like someone that you're trying to like build a computer with, or pick a show, maybe
Just
pick
plug it
dinner
in. Just
locations.
install the thing. I don't understand what's
Did you
taking so long.
reboot?
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is in the engineering world, there's a very clear start and finish, right? A project has a kickoff and a closing, and there may be milestones along the way, but sales doesn't have an ending. It's perpetuating, and it's hey, do we have a follow up call scheduled? Hey, do we have a next step? Right? Those don't necessarily exist when you finish your engineering tasks, and it's a completely new mindset and a new adoption. I appreciate that you bring up, the technical background kind of fitting in. Uh, I don't think it's for everybody, um, but I've been told and I've been advised for many years prior to joining this side is I should give it a try, and I'm really happy I did.
Yeah, I would encourage people that have strictly been in sales and not tech to like learn a little something.
Hmm.
Like open your terminal and just see what happens. Learn how to close Vim. I actually
Go
have
get
a
a certification. There you go.
yes. I have an older colleague, and his LinkedIn tagline is like the only salesperson that knows how to close exit Vim. I'm like,
That's
that's
I mean
great.
that's a
Good
good
job,
one.
Kevin. Love it.
That's definitely a good conversation piece right there.
So
But
now I'm curious of like so you see you have a portfolio of 700 solutions that you kind of have to know at least a little bit about. Some of them deeper than others. But what do you see like is emerging? What is coming next in cybersecurity? And maybe we can get into a little news here if you want.
yeah, I mean, so it's some of it's the same old stuff. Just for those network nerds out there, right? IPv4 had problems. IPv6 has the same problems as IPv4. Um, what's old is new again in the industry, right? And so we'll always, still see um, good technology around the host, good technology around cloud infrastructure, good technology around people problems like email, phishing, stuff like that. Uh, but I'll tell you, as of November of last year, I cannot. I need to give me one of these things. I need a drink here. Agentic AI has just been the hot new thing popping up. Obviously, we are in the age of AI, right? This is definitely something that's been around for a couple of years now, and not the legacy AI of programmed responses, but this modern AI age. This agentic AI has really started to take off in the cybersecurity space by allowing smaller, more targeted, more focused capabilities. One of the big ones I'm seeing is like SOC. We've tried to challenge companies to figure out how to do like tier one support for tickets and stuff like that when an incident comes in, how to triage, how to research, how to information gather. Well, we're pretty much at the point now where AI can do a lot of that stuff. We're seeing AI, especially in its agentic form, applied across the enterprise simply because it's not this classic AI, which I hate to even call it that, which is these massive systems of data sets. It's hyper focused, hyper quick, it's tiny, one off. It's almost like right here's data center, the containerization of AI versus the virtualization of AI. One is like it's not bare metal, but it's still a thick client versus a thin
Yeah,
client.
that's a great way
So
to put it. I haven't thought about virtualized like a VM versus like a container, like a Docker container. The agentic version is the bare bones, just what I need to get done
hmm
tool to go do the job and report back.
Exactly.
And
It's a smaller slice.
usually on this show, I'm the one who brings up AI. So I'm glad it was you this time.
Well, I mean, we can't get away from it, and that's fine. That's acceptable because it's not just necessarily companies that are bringing AI to the table. Customers are adopting AI, and that means that we have to figure out how to, get a grasp on what's going right. The threats right now in AI aren't necessarily we'll say like an external hack. It's how much access does your AI have, and it's not the AI's fault. It's because those permissions existed before. It's just following its directive. Look at Copilot and accidentally finding all the financial records. It's just highlighting a data security problem we already had prior. It's just
Mm.
exponentially bringing it to the surface.
You mentioned something else in there that was pretty interesting. You were kind of saying that you were encouraging companies like with a soccer sim to do some things with agentic AI in this case. But I think what I was listening and hearing was that if Jonathan Singer comes to your door and says, "Hey, vendor, you guys maybe should think about X or Y." The reason you're saying that is probably because people are asking you for it and you have nothing to provide for them.
Yeah, well, we get questions all day long from the customers, right? It's I have this challenge or I have this compliance I need to abide by. I have these new systems and I, need some guidance on how to approach it. Uh, I, Look, I'm not a developer. I'm in no position to tell any company what direction they should go in. But at the end of the day, we are the ears on the streets. We're hearing what's going
Yep.
on from both sides of the market, right? What's going on the vendor side with development, bleeding edge technologies, all kinds of fun stuff like that, and also from the customer side. What are their concerns? What are their needs? What are they being told to do from compliance and regulatory requirements, or what are they being told to do because they're doing mergers and acquisitions, and there's new things that are being introduced to them in a rapid business pace, and uh, it's it's going to come from both sides more or less, but uh, it's definitely interesting to see where the security industry is going. uh, and one of the things too is, I mentioned early on, like there's a lot of startups. Uh, Big enterprises aren't necessarily always afraid of bleeding edge or beta testing or new customer use case stuff. There's a ton of people out there that obviously will always say, "I need well-established, mature,
Mm-hmm.
best-of-breed products." Cool. We all know who those companies are because they have massive marketing budgets at RSA. But at the same time, some of these smaller ones, there is absolutely an opportunity for adoption in the industry simply because they're novel or clever or bringing something more efficient to the table.
Yeah, and it makes sense why a large company that may tend to stick with established brands would be benefited to purchase through someone like GuidePoint, because it's kind of like, if you buy something on a credit card, you can do a chargeback or whatever. It's kind of like that scenario where you can provide a little bit of guidance on whether GuidePoint trusts the solution or not.
We definitely take our vendors and put them through the ringer, and I mean that. If you remember, we had Tiger Cage, right? And just the concept of you know okay, so your website says what your product does, or your documentation says what your product does, but really, show us,
What does
prove
it do?
it, let our engineering teams rip it to pieces, all kinds of fun stuff like that. We have folks in our different professional services teams that have gone back to vendors and helped them fix their documentation or fix different things um, because there were errors and typos, and that we're almost coming in as a little bit ahead of the curve on some of their own solutions. It's definitely really cool with that. We get to hear the horror stories too. When a solution is selected and implementation doesn't go well because of technical hurdles, or promises weren't kept for capabilities after delivery, right? We see this. And we kind of keep track of, just because you're maybe the biggest player in the market, it doesn't mean that you actually deliver well on what you're trying to sell. And so we can always provide objective feedback and experiential, kind of information. Again, never necessarily putting anybody in, a super positive or super negative light. This is just based on what I've seen, myself.
Yeah, that's a really great kind of service for GuidePoint to kind of provide, is to be a sounding board, a sanity check for vendors. Like, let us see what it does. We'll provide you feedback from customers that we hear about. And that's like the holy grail for companies like DNS Filters, hearing what our customers say,
Mm-hmm.
like in private. Like, what do you actually think about it? Like, tell us, we want to improve it.
Well, yeah, it's going to be some of that. It's going to be us, saying, hey, look, uh, you know, we had some challenges with this before we, start to introduce it in a customer space. Do you think we should get this resolved? Do you think we should address how we're communicating these solutions to make sure that we're not being dishonest about it? Again, I'm always, the second somebody comes at me and tells me guaranteed every time, 100% perfect, all, I'm like, back to the drawing
Never
board.
mind.
You completely lost it on me.
So we're recording this in the middle of April
Mhm.
2025. And we were talking about kind of salespeople staying up with the news and trends. And
It's important.
just yesterday, I believe we saw a news article about how the CVE database, this is where they
Mhm.
kind of list and tag critical vulnerabilities that have been discovered, it lost its funding.
Mhm.
But Jonathan, you had some thoughts about it before we got on, so I think it would be cool to go over it on the show.
Well, and just for those listening, right? You mentioned the CVE, this database of vulnerabilities, but this is essentially like the most critical component to identifying, tracking, and addressing vulnerabilities in products across the entire cyberspace, right? Everything that runs some kind of software or operating system or hardware, um, and it has a problem, it oftentimes addressed with a CVE. It's a Dewey Decimal System that's been described of
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity. I think I was reading some posts from Jenny Sterley about that, and basically, uh, without this foundational bit of knowledge, how do we do vulnerability management? How do we identify and address and accumulate information on problems that we find? And so, yes, this is a big kind of shock to the industry. But luckily, as I'm kind of reading some more of social media this morning, as I rot my brain, um, it's there looks like to be some kind of outside initiatives that are really starting to step up to the plate. Take on some of that burden of the financial responsibilities, of the personnel responsibilities. This life cycle of a CVE touches a lot of hands, right? There's the security researchers that are identifying and documenting a vulnerability. There's organizers that are receiving, triaging, reviewing, and validating vulnerabilities. There's communicators with vendors to prove out that these are problems, that there is a road to patching. There's a lot of people involved, and as we know, people equals money, time, all that other stuff. And so I hope that we find a solution to this pretty quickly.
Agreed. And this story is still like unfolding. And I don't normally talk about news on this, but I thought that was an important thing to bring up because, as you mentioned, it is so critical. Like, it would be hard for cybersecurity to work in its current form without that system. So, on all likelihood, something will be done to continue its work. I assume. I'm like crossing my fingers, but I
It,
just wanted
it,
to bring that up. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and I think the industry depends on it in general. Just imagine a world where we didn't have inside information to vulnerabilities as they were happening in real time. It's it's kind of leaving us blind, and what that means is only that the threat actors with good nation state funding. Those are the ones who are going to be able
Yeah,
to keep up with this kind of stuff.
the bad guys are doing a little dance right now. They're like, "Oh, that would be great." They can't communicate with each
Uh,
other.
it keeps us employed, but that's not what we're here for.
Exactly. Well, maybe we should do more news on the show. That was kind of fun. Maybe me and you, Jonathan, we can do a little news side gig or something. I do like reporting on things. Also,
I love
4chan
it.
got hacked.
Yeah.
But we're not going to
It,
talk about that. I'm just
oh,
going to
I
say,
mean, I
Jonathan.
can. If
Okay,
anybody's
go
been
ahead.
around the internet long enough, you've probably heard of the hacker called 4chan. But I think the moral of the story is less about 4chan itself and more about vulnerabilities, right? Which is a,
CVEs.
a CVE for PHP that was taken advantage of, that was exploited. Uh, Again, you may have your opinions on the origins of the internet and things of that nature. Um, everybody uh, everybody gets targeted at some point. I feel like online, and then
Agreed.
it was their time.
They had their time in the sun, and now it's time to pay the piper, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan,
No,
thank you so much for joining me today. Oh, you got something else?
no,
Keep going.
I want to take up your offer on discussing cybersecurity news. I try to stay ahead of the curve. I try to understand what's going on. I do send articles to my customers that are relevant to them, and so this is right up my alley. Sign me up, Mikey.
All right. Well, let us know in the comments if you think Jonathan and I should do a news show. And maybe stay tuned to the podcatcher near you. You might see a new podcast pop up. We'll make it
Absolutely,
short, though, like 5 minutes.
whatever works.
All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan, for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. Can't wait to come back and chat some more.